Welcome to Strain on the Game, the podcast that reveals what it really takes to keep elite footballers performing at the highest level. I'm Stephen Warnock, former Premier League player, joined by physical performance expert Adrian Lamb. From training ground truths to the financial impact of fitness, we discuss the often overlooked challenges behind the beautiful game. Club World Cup's been called everything from a money grab to a pointless pre-season disruption. But with a prize pot of over $1 billion on the table, surely it can't be dismissed that easily. In this episode, we'll be asking, is the Club World Cup a valuable addition to the football calendar, or is the risk to the players worth the financial payoff? Follow us on social media and YouTube at Strain on the Game. Subscribe, like, and follow. Lammy, how are you? It is great to see you again. How's things going out in America?
Yeah, good, hot, but never mind how I am, because I've had it on very good authority that you have come out of retirement and you've got the boots back on. Are the rumours true?
Yeah, I got asked to play in a charity game, which was obviously there was a major incident last year in Southport, which was close to where we live, and they did a charity game at the weekend and asked a few ex-players and celebrities to come on along and support the charity. So the boots were back on, mate. I played 80 minutes. I actually scored a goal as well. I scored a goal.
On goal? Right.
Marauding left back. There was quite a few goals went on down my side in the first half because I couldn't get back in.
Well, it was a charity game and you were being very charitable. But no, good for you for doing that and everyone involved. You know, fantastic. So many things that players and former players do on that side of things that just doesn't get talked about. But I've got a serious question for you. Right. So anyone who listened to a previous podcast will know that you quite foolishly voluntarily decided that you were going to give up Cherry Coke. Right. Now,
yes.
As both knowing you as an individual and knowing what players are like, after this game, did you crave a Cherry Coke? 2, did you succumb to your cravings?
I was desperate for a Cherry Coke, and I hadn't been up until the game. But I went to the Chippy as well. Good meal after the game, and when I was stood in the Chippy with Kelly, my fiance, I was like, I'd really like a Cherry Coke now, but I didn't do it, and I still haven't had one. So I'm doing well, but I think I'm having other problems now because I'm finding other solutions, not fizzy drinks, but just sweets and chocolate, and it's not going well, mate.
Yeah, no, that's often the case, and that you often find your substitute. But help is at hand, Stephen. Help is at hand, because there's a serious aspect to this. So one of the jobs of a fitness coach is to find solutions and to try to help deliver the performance aims. So I have done some research on your behalf, right, and I have produced. I'm holding in my hand a can of Olipop.
Cherry Cola?
Cherry Cola Olipop.
Well, I just said I can't have that.
So this is not a normal Cherry Cola. It's a healthy alternative to Cherry Cola. All right. So in terms of, now I probably actually wouldn't have this after a game because it's got quite a lot of fiber in it, but it's full of prebiotics, botanicals, plant fibers. There are other things. I don't know whether these are available in England and in the UK.
I've not seen them.
There's another one and a similar product called Poppy, which also does a Cherry Cola.
I've seen Poppy when I've been in America.
Right. Well, I've
never drank it.
I just nipped down the shop and they had this was what they had in the Cherry Cola. So
excellent.
The next time I come over, I'm not going to bring any luggage. I'm just going to use my
crate of Olipop or Poppy.
I'm going to use my £45 allowance or whatever it is for a slab of Olipop or Cherry Cola Poppy, because I'm a team player and I find solutions for my players.
You're a star. Can't wait. Excellent. Okay, so let's talk about the Club World Cup. You're in America, living in Santa Monica, and we've got the Club World Cup on, or we've had it on. how was it perceived over there? Was it negative, positive? How was it looked at?
I would say it was it was a mixed bag. The early games didn't really fire the imagination, and I think that probably got reported on in the UK in terms of tickets were going for $4 and all of those kind of things. As the competition progressed and it got beyond the group stages and into the knockout rounds, and actually I think one of the inflection points was Manchester City being knocked out.
Yeah.
Was something that, okay, this has got a story behind it, and that seemed to capture the imagination a little bit more, and people became a little bit more invested in it. But yeah, I think there was kind of two sides to it. There was the early part. I know that in Los Angeles, Paris Saint-Germain were here, and they did an awful lot of community stuff. They had people coming out to watch them train. So in that respect, it was similar to a normal off-season tour, and it had that kind of feeling about it until we got to the knockout stages, and then it felt like a proper tournament.
Yeah, I think the perception in England was, what's the point in the competition? Why are they doing this? And then I think once the competition started, I think you started to see a different side to it. It was a little bit different as well because we had the England under-21s were playing around the same time when the group stages were on. And I think a lot of people were thinking, well, I quite like to follow the England under-21s, but I think, like you say, once it got past the group stages, then it started to really kick into life. So what we're going to do now, rather than just pick the bones out of it like everyone has and look at all the negatives, let's actually look at some of the positives that came from the Club World Cup. You've just said it there about Paris Saint-Germain and talking about the positive work they did in the community. I think that's one of the things that clubs were looking at, thinking this is an opportunity to tap into a market that perhaps isn't there. If you went on pre-season, that would only be a 10-day trip or something, whereas Paris Saint-Germain, Chelsea had that opportunity for well over a month to make sure that they were seen as a brand and do positive things. So from a positive aspect, what are you taking from it from your side of the game?
I think well, there's two things. I mean, we've got to address the financial aspects of it first of all. So clubs are coming under greater pressure from financial fair play, and that is just a situation that's going to increase. The burden of that is probably going to fall onto players.
Yeah.
So in terms of, from a Chelsea point of view, how much money did Chelsea make out of the Club World Cup?
So to win the actual competition, Chelsea walked away with £84 million.
Right.
Which,
so that's
okay. So if you compare this to Paris Saint-Germain, who won 83 million euros for winning the Champions League over the course of a season, condensed into a 4-week period, that's incredible.
Right. Yeah. So that's a positive, isn't it?
It's a huge positive, isn't it, from a club's point of view? So one of the other things I was sort of reading up on was in this short space of time, 3 games played by Real Madrid earned them €10 million or $10 million, effectively 10 million euros, that paid for Trent Alexander-Arnold. Borussia Dortmund, being involved in the competition, had just bought Joe Bellingham from Sunderland. Mm-hmm. The £27 million paid to Sunderland was earned during that competition. So effectively, they haven't paid for him. That's the bonus of this competition, isn't it, money-wise?
Yeah, and we can sit here and try to be morally superior and say, look, the commercials, and this is we have to find a balance, I think, between the commercial forces that are driving football towards more and more games and the burden that is placing on players. I think we need to really look carefully at where the balance is with that. But we've at the same time, I talk about the increase in performance staff in my time in the game, from me being essentially a one-man band doing everything as a fitness coach, doing the nutrition, doing the strength and conditioning, to now having all of these huge performance departments with specialist roles. That has to be paid for.
Yeah.
So as much as we find the commercial side of the game distasteful, or it impinges on some of the things that we want to do as fitness coaches, it also opens the door to all of these technologies that we develop. They cost us a lot of money. Data management systems cost a lot of money. They have to be paid for.
Can I ask you a question on that then? If you know the money that's coming in from the Club World Cup, and you're in the medical department, in the fitness department, are you going knocking on the manager's door saying, okay, well, what are we getting out of that?
I'm certainly making a case for investment in the performance department, and I'm putting a budget together, and I'm doing my research, and I'm doing my homework, and I'm creating a document or a report that says this piece of kit, we had X amount of injuries last season which were related to this particular injury. This piece of technology, or this piece of kit, or this member of staff, if we invest in this area, then we will improve our player availability.
Yeah.
And if this money is coming into the club, then as an investment into the future, this is a solid investment. So I've got to go with a very strong case. I'm not just knocking on the door and saying, hey, we've got 87 million quid through the door. Can I have a bit of it? But, and there are always it might be a cryotherapy unit. It might be the gym needs refurbishing, because they always do. There's new technology coming online all the time. And so I need to justify that spend to not just the manager, but to the board and to the financial directors. And they will want, financial directors are as tight as cramp. You know what I mean? They will.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So, and justifiably so, every penny is a prisoner. But if I can make a case, and it could be, we want to increase our nutritional support, so we want to invest in a full-time nutritionist rather than a part-time nutritionist, and this is what it will cost.
Yeah.
So those things do open the door to driving the performance department forward.
Yeah. So from the point of view of a team, what is the positives about the Club World Cup? Like, for instance, Manchester City, would it have worked in their favour to have the Club World Cup as part of their, if you like, their pre-season?
I think this might be a generational joke, but do you remember the Eric Morecambe sketch when he's playing the piano and he's playing the completely wrong tune, and the guy says,
I do remember that.
You're right. You're playing the wrong notes, and he grabs him by the scruff of the neck and says, I'm playing all the right notes, but not necessarily in the right order. That's a little bit how I feel about Manchester City's off-season / pre-season. They've done all the things that you would do in an off-season and a pre-season campaign or period, but they've done it in a different order. So they had, the last Premier League game was on, I think, the 25th of May.
Mm-hmm.
And then the players dropped into that international window, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think Manchester City, they arrived in the States on the 12th of June, right? Which is slap bang in the middle of your rest and regeneration and recovery period. And they're straight away into competitive games. And that's an important factor in all of this when we're talking about Club World Cup, is they're not an off-season tour. Yeah, the games are, in inverted commas, competitive, but these are real games. There's a trophy at the end of this. These are proper games, and they're straight into it. Normally, you would have those high-intensity games towards the end of your pre-season period before you're going in. They played, I think, 4 games, didn't they? And they had the final game. They got knocked out, and then they went out and they had a 4-week break. And then they've come back together. They've had a 3-week pre-season period before.
So they've had 1 week off then. So they've had a week off from the end of the Club World Cup.
Yeah.
And then they've gone into a
mini
pre-season.
Because they're all international players, aren't they? So Haaland, for example, they played the last game on the 25th. He's gone off with Norway. They've had 2 qualifiers against Italy and I think Estonia, I want to say. And then I think his final one was on the 9th of June. And then on the 12th of June, he's flying to the States with Man City.
Wow.
So he hasn't had a break. And we're talking about Manchester City here, so they're all internationals by and large. So they'll all be with the national teams. So although they've had a 2-week break, they haven't really, because they've all been with the national teams. And then they've gone into the Club World Cup. I thought Manchester City did it really well because they established a base, and we go back to, Paris Saint-Germain being based in LA and the work they do in the community. Manchester City established a base in Florida, and they flew in for the games and flew back. So they had some consistency there in terms of their facilities, familiarity with the hotel. All of the families were with them, so it was a slightly different feeling from a pre-season tour. And then when they lost that game, they flew. That was them finished. They had a 4-week break. And then they came back in. They've got a 3-week pre-season period. They've got 1 game in that period in Sicily, I believe. And then they're into it. I wonder, and listen, we don't know. We don't know because we are in uncharted territory.
This is the first one, isn't it? So we're all going to learn from this. And obviously you will more than anyone as well. And you'll be looking at as many statistics as you can, won't you?
Yeah. So I just wonder from a fitness coach's point of view, they've front loaded all of the travel, the tour, and all of the disruption and the disruption to sleep and all of the fatigue that comes along with that. They've front loaded that. They've got it out of the way with early on, and then they've come back and they've had a recovery period. Effectively, they've had a 4-week rest, and then they've had a structured 3-week pre-season program. One of the questions in my mind, and I'd welcome your views on this, is that Manchester City have got a lot of new coaching staff, haven't they?
Yeah.
And pre-season isn't just about getting fitter, it's about developing the tactical side of the way we want to play this season. So is 3 weeks enough time for them to embed themselves into that culture and to get their ideas across?
Oh, absolutely. I think it is. I think ideally you want more time, but I think I put myself in the player's shoes more than anything. Being in and around people day in, day out, living in a hotel with people, getting to know the families, I think you're going to integrate so much quicker. I think one of the benefits that we saw from clubs in the Club World Cup was that they did their business very early. Manchester City did a lot of business in the transfer window. Chelsea bought in the likes of Delap and João Pedro. Real Madrid bought in Trent Alexander-Arnold. They bought in a couple of other players as well. So everyone seems to get the jobs by the players early, which is vitally important. Then you go away and you have that little element of just relaxing away from that. And then when you come back and you've got that pre-season for, say, 3-week period, well, you already know everyone. You're very much comfortable with your surroundings. I'm guessing they would have settled into houses and done all that work while that period of off time was available to them. So you're coming into the dressing room in a completely different way. And I think that's a huge positive. I really do. I think that's, from a player's point of view, that's very interesting.
I think you're absolutely right, 100%. And one of the things that I meant to say earlier as well, in terms of the players' families were out with them, and they were based in the hotel. That getting to know you period that you've spoken about, then the fact that the families are together, I think that is a big driver of team building as well, that you don't get when you're on a conventional summer tour with a team. You don't take your families with you, do you? The fact that the families were all out with them, I think, is a really, really big positive in integrating new players in.
How would you balance that then in that month away? Or say, for Man City's sake, what were they there, 2.5 weeks? And Chelsea were there for a month. How are you balancing that out? What are you allowing the players to do? Because I'm guessing the players were, well, from what I understand, the players were staying in the same hotel, but the wives and partners and kids were all in different rooms, and you were allowed to see them at various times. So how would you structure that?
I think there's been a sort of an evolution in terms of player responsibility and the influence that players have on the decisions that coaches make. So it's a collaborative decision. So it's in terms of, I will have certain views of at certain times, as long as you're coming in and training and doing the properly and recovering properly, then I'm quite comfortable with what you're doing away from the training environment, provided you're doing the right things. And by and large, players do the right things. I think we would be taking advice from sports psychologists. We would be taking, everybody will have an opinion on that. The head coach, the manager, the assistant manager, everybody will have a view. It will be probably taken then towards the players' committee. This is what we think. What do you think? And I think that is a much more powerful decision-making process than just imposing onto players, this is what you are going to do. Because when players disagree with training times, or we're going to be training at 8 o'clock at night, and why? Because we just are. And if there's a communication process, and where this is what we think as a coaching staff, and this is why we want to train at 8 o'clock at night. What do you think? Can you get on board with that? And sometimes the players will say no, and it's like, we're still doing it anyway. Right, because it's the right thing to do. I always took the view that players report at 9 to the training ground at 9 o'clock in the morning, and they've probably gone by 1:30. 1:30 they've gone, so that they're away from the training environment significantly longer than they're in the training environment. So if you're, driving certain behaviors underground, and we're going to do this when we're not at the training ground anyway. There's the famous story about the manager who imposed a very, very strict nutritional regime, and you can't have this, you can't have that, and tomato ketchup is off and everything. And the players were just, it was counterproductive, because the players were going to McDonald's on the way home from training. So the pendulum swings too far the other way.
The last positive I sort of took away from the Club World Cup is, in a year's time, we're going to have a World Cup in America. Yeah. This was an opportunity for managers of national teams and their staff to go over and watch at close hands and go, what's going to happen here? What's the training conditions like? What's the temperatures? How do we manage that next year? So from your point of view, sat down with the staff, because I'm looking at it from my point of view of a player, like, they now know the top players who played at the Club World Cup, what the conditions are like, how they're going to deal with it, how tough it was, whether they're going to have to change that style of play. What is that looking like from a staff point of view if you're going over with the manager?
Absolutely. I mean, if from my perspective, I'm looking at what the physical outputs were and what the deterioration in physical outputs were against what is normal. So what does a normal game look like for Manchester City? What does a normal game look like for Chelsea and all the other teams, versus what was their physical outputs in this tournament, and how was that impacted by the environment? And also, I'm straight into the coaching staff of those teams. If I'm a national team member of staff,
is that easy accessible? Have you got that not authority, but that ability to knock on a door and say, "Can we sit down and have a chat?"
England have got a lot better at it. They used to be a little bit give us the data. We've selected this player from your club. Give us the data. And the communication was very, very, give us all of his training data. And you did, but it was very dictatorial in a way. Yeah. They made a lot of headway in terms of building relationships with clubs and with club staff. And it became less of, we are England, you will do what we ask you to do because we are England. And it became much more, listen, this is your player that we're borrowing for a bit. So what does he do in his activation? What does his injury prevention look like? What's his nutrition regimes? Finding out the player, but very, very much more in how can you help us rather than give us all the stuff.
Okay, so we've spoke about the positives of the Club World Cup. Let's have a little look at the negatives. So one of the negatives I've looked at from certainly Paris Saint-Germain's point of view, who were in the final against Chelsea. They played on the 31st of May in the final of the Champions League. And then just 15 days later, they are in the first game of the Club World Cup. Chelsea played on the 28th of May in the Conference League final. And then 19 days later, they play their first game on the 16th of June against LAFC. You spoke about international games in between that. This cannot be good for the players, surely.
Yeah, I mean, this is now we're starting to get into the, you know, the real impact of what the Club World Cup is going to have.
This is the bit you've been waiting for, isn't it?
Well, you know, it's an extension of my feelings about pre-season tours, but it's been magnified a little bit because it's slap bang in the middle of the time that players should be recovering, resting, regenerating physically, certainly mentally. I can't think of a sport in the world that doesn't have a break at some point. And from a sports science point of view, and even as a sports science student many years ago, every periodization model has a break built into it as a fundamental part of the annual calendar. So when we're driving when we're adding these games into the annual fixture list, and it's always the elite players, so there's a slight discrepancy. It's not every player, it's the top elite players. And we've spoken earlier that, you know, at the end of the Premier League, there was an international window, and the elite players are all internationals, so they've all gone with their national teams. And then they've had to join up with their club teams and go to the Club World Cup, right in the middle of the exact time when they should be recovering, regenerating. And you know what it's like as a player. There's always those little grumbling little injuries that you're trying to nurse through to the end of the season. And it's like, yeah, we can just get. Did you ever have that? Like a little one, like a grumbling groin or
I had them all the time. But
yeah,
it depends where you are at the end of the season. But say if you're relatively safe, you're not going in for challenges. You're making sure that you're on the beach when you need to be.
Yeah.
The worst one I ever had, and this was the worst time, and I'm still suffering from it now. I was at Aston Villa, and I'd moved from Blackburn, and it was the year we went to the World Cup, and it was 2010. And last game of the season, we're playing Blackburn at Villa Park, and I don't know who it was, but someone like clipped my ankle, and it just ballooned. And I came off during the game, and that night I flew to Dubai, and when I got there, I literally couldn't walk. My ankle was huge. And I remember sitting in an ice bucket for the first 2 or 3 days thinking, this is a nightmare. And then I got a call up for England for the provisional squad to the World Cup. And I think it was about a week after the last game of the season, maybe 10 days. And there was no way I was not going to make that provisional squad because it's going to a World Cup. And I was like, no, I'm going to be fit. I'm going to make sure. And then, I managed to soldier through, but I was nowhere near fit enough. I was terrible, but you're not going to give that up. And I think that's one of the things that even a tournament like this, you don't want to miss out because you don't know what it's going to be. You're hearing the Chelsea players talking about it now, saying, we think this could be a huge tournament. I know it's because they're the first to win it and things like that. But they're talking about this tournament as if it's going to be huge, and they think it could be the biggest competition in the world. So players who compete in that want to be available for it.
Yeah, well, the propaganda, and there's an interesting one which has come to light after the Club World Cup has finished, in that Jude Bellingham has chosen, or the club have chosen, I should probably expect it's more a club decision than an individual decision, to have his shoulder operation after the Club World Cup than at the end of the season. So that sends a lot of messages to me in terms of what is the priority here, right? So I'm looking at that. He's going to miss 8 La Liga games, or is expected to miss 8 La Liga games if everything goes according to plan, and 2 Champions League games. So I look at that and I think, right, have the club said, okay, our priority here is the Club World Cup. We need him available for that. We can probably manage through the first 8 games of La Liga season and the first 2 Champions League games without him. Yeah. As long as he's available for the business end of the season when we're busy picking up trophies and doing Real Madrid things. So that sends a very clear message to me, in terms of how serious clubs are taking the Club World Cup, and also how serious players are taking it, because he's delayed his operation until after the Club World Cup and sacrificed the start of the season. So I think that's a really, really interesting situation.
Well, I think from a player's point of view, even the Club World Cup was a massive unknown. It could have been his decision. He could have said, no, I want to play in that, because if they win it, he wants to be part of a winning team, because no matter what you win, you still feel it's important. Listen, there's little trophies in pre-season that they're not counted, but this is a 32-team competition with some incredible teams within it. So if you do go on and win that, you'd want to be part of it. So yeah, I find that interesting.
What would your view as a player? So we've spoken earlier about what the club want and what the club say, and as coaches, what we dictate to players, and now there's a little bit more of a collaborative decision-making process where players are in the center of the decision-making process, really. As a player, and the club have come to you, because I'm mindful of, I think it was Rodri, wasn't it, in November? And he was talking about players going on strike because they're playing too many games. And this was in and around the time when the Champions League was being expanded. So they're playing more games. The Club World Cup was being expanded into,
a competition,
games, into a proper competition, and all of that was starting. The realities of that was starting to become apparent to players, and he was like, he went on record and said, players will end up going on strike. As a player, how would you think, like, when you get to the end of the season and your mind automatically starts drifting towards family time and holidays and time away from the being the treadmill, the day-to-day work? Are you thinking, I can't wait for the Club World Cup, it's in 2 weeks' time? What would you think your reaction would be?
I think it depends how manageable your injury is. I think if you know you're going to then get an operation and you're going to have a period of 4 months out the game, there's going to be some downtime within that 4-month period, isn't there? So I think you're going to realise that you are going to get a holiday at the end of it. I think when you look at Jude Bellingham, and I'm just going to say it because it's him, when you look at him, he's strapped up all the time with these tapes over his shoulder. So that's been a long period of time. I remember seeing it like at the beginning of last season.
I think it was 2023 he dislocated his shoulder.
Yeah. So he's been managing that for a long time, and he's been happy to manage it. And he's obviously felt he wants to play in the competition, because if it was that bad, you'd just be saying, I can't do it. I need an operation. And he hasn't. So I think from that point of view, he's obviously just felt, I'm quite happy to have that break at the start of the season. I want to play in that competition. And he obviously feels that he's capable of doing that. I think we'll only know in 10 years' time whether he's a burnout, won't we? And that's the thing. So,
what about if taking injuries out of it, and you're just a player in the squad, and the Club World Cup is there?
Oh, money talks.
Yeah.
If the club are saying, and you only have to listen to Carlo Ancelotti, they announced that the Club World Cup is going to expand, it's going to get bigger, and he says we're not playing in it. as Real Madrid. When he was manager, he was like, not interested in it one bit. Suddenly they announce it's a $1 billion prize purse split between the teams. And he's like, we'll be there. And that is the almighty Real Madrid. And the players they'll go in and negotiate a fee out of whatever they earn as a club. So that whole purse won't go to the club. That'll go between the players as well. So they're getting a massive bonus. The only thing I would say to it is they don't need it. These days, if you're at the very top of your game, playing for the likes of Chelsea, Real Madrid at the Club World Cup, you don't need an extra few quid. I think the rest is more than what you'd need. It's not a monetary thing then, but some players will see it as, give me more. I think it'll split it, divide the camps.
I think certain players are motivated by different things, aren't there? Some would be, I want to go and win this thing. This looks great.
Yeah.
And some will be saying, I want to go and earn a few more quid. And people's motivations are their own personal things. There's nothing to do with those. But and it.
Yeah. So
I'll stop there. Yeah.
No, it's okay. So one of the other negatives is the travel side of things, and you spoke about this in the previous episode about pre-season travel and how disruptive it can be and how much of a negative effect it can have. So I did a little bit of totting up, and I've looked at Chelsea's travel. So I'm guessing Chelsea would travel from Heathrow. So they would fly private. So planes are more comfortable, bigger, spacious. But they've roughly done a 9-hour flight from Heathrow to Atlanta. They've then done a 2-hour flight to Philadelphia. There is a flight then to North Carolina, which is 1 hour 40 minutes. Then they go to Philadelphia, 1 hour 40 back, and then there's a drive to the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. So roughly 16 hours of travel in and around to get to America and travel around America. Then home is 25 hours of travel on planes, roughly. How's that affecting the players? Is it as bad as you're making out? Because that to me doesn't seem that bad and excessive.
Right. It's travel fatigue is one of the most underestimated burdens that players have to put up with. Okay. Aircraft are terrible, terrible environments for athletes to be in for a number of reasons. One of them is low cabin pressure. So if you think when you're going on an aeroplane and you've got a bottle of water and you take a sip out of it and you put it in the seat in front of you in the flap.
Yeah.
Right, and then you come back a couple of hours. What's that bottle of water look like? It's all crumpled up and compressed.
Yeah.
So just think about what that's doing to your body.
Never thought of it like that, but
right. Well, that's an analogy that I use, and even short haul flights, and when I say short haul flight, I mean less than 6 hours, have been shown to impede performance and to increase the risk of injury. So low cabin pressure, the air is at a lower level of humidity, so you increase your dehydration level. So I think I saw a study that your normal rate of dehydration is 160 milliliters per hour. On an aircraft, it's 360 because you essentially 360 milliliters. So it's 2.5 times the rate of dehydration. So players are getting dehydrated. The oxygen saturation levels in this microclimate that we're in is much lower. So you're in a hypoxic environment. That's really important post-game in terms of muscle recovery and muscle regeneration. So that is impeded by putting athletes and players onto these aircraft. And then the third, probably the fourth point is, I've lost count of how many points I've made, is... Yes, they are listen, these players are going to be in first class. They're going to be, but they are exposed to prolonged periods of sitting and not moving around, and that causes connective tissues and muscles to shorten and tighten, and it causes the blood to pool to the lower extremities. So we wear the compression socks to try and alleviate some of that. But the negative effects of air travel on athletes is very, very profound, and it can have significant effects. When I worked in the MLS, I saw a flight as something that I had to recover from, as the players had to recover the players from. And that could have been as little as we're going out for a walk for half an hour just to stretch our legs.
Yeah.
Or it could be something much more sophisticated with that. We're going to jump on the bike for 20 minutes. We've got massage. We've got the Normatex. We might jump in the pool. But there are a lot of negative impacts of travel, which we need we need to mitigate the effects of before and during the flight. So encouraging hydration. Anecdotally, I had a player, I would encourage him we need to hydrate before the flight. We need to hydrate before the flight. And he's like, I don't like to, because I'm stuck in the seat and we're taxiing for takeoff. I really need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And, they're telling me I'm not allowed, and I'm worried about, so these things are real. These are real effects that players have that you've got to manage. So it's trying to hydrate through. Wear your compression socks. I don't want to wear my compression socks. Wear your tights. Get up and walk around. Right when we arrive at where we're going to, we need to have a recovery session. Aircraft are terrible, terrible, terrible environments for players to be in. And the more travel you have, the more these effects are going to have.
So you've lived out in America for how long now?
I've been in LA for 3 years now. Before that, I was in Chicago 10 years ago for a year. And I was
in Toronto as well?
I was in Toronto for a year before that, yeah.
So talk us through the heat and how difficult it is to either train in the heat. So these teams have obviously been subjected to the high temperatures of June. Enzo Maresca said it's absolutely ridiculous to have a tournament at this time of year, and also to host a tournament of this magnitude in America when you have got the World Cup next year also in America.
Yeah.
Is it as bad as everyone's making out, basically?
Yeah. I mean, in the United States this year, we've had record heat stress index figures, so it's not just heat, it's humidity. That has been on the rise for a while. The other thing which hasn't been spoken about, but is a very significant factor, is the air quality at the moment is very, very bad because of wildfires, which have been caused by the heat. It was the same 2 years ago. Were you over for the summer, the Premier League
summer series? Yeah.
Right. And then I know that in New York, a number of the teams were in New York, and at that time there's these wildfires, Canadian wildfires, and the air quality in New York was amongst the very worst in the world. So,
Sorry, you want about the summer series that's just gone, or the one a couple of years ago?
No, that was in 2023. But
yeah, I was across for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that happened then, and that was a significant issue. It's a significant issue now. So there's the heat. That issue is magnified by kickoff times to satisfy a European audience, or a predominantly European audience. So you could kick off in the MLS for example, we would jump on an aeroplane in Chicago and it would be fairly chilly, and then we'd drop off in Houston and it would be incredible. I mean, it's like, what is going on? When you get off and it hits you like a wall.
I'd love that. I just like heat.
But I'm a proper northerner and I can't stand the heat. It's like, no. Yeah. Why do you live in Los Angeles then? So it's a very, very real problem, and acclimatizing to that level of heat and humidity takes an awful long time. And I saw the same quote that you saw, and we have been exposed to that when we were at Aston Villa, when we went to Hong Kong. What was it like for you trying to train in that heat and humidity? Because it's similar.
Yeah, it's brutal, isn't it? It's very difficult. I think one of my problems is I sweat very easily. Literally walk outside, if it's above 20 degrees, I'm dripping in sweat. So to try and get the right the right fluids down you to make sure that you are rehydrated is very difficult. I think if you're doing a training session in that type of heat, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you are playing at say 3 p.m. in America, you would ideally train around the same time to get used to them conditions to acclimatize your body. So I often found after a training session, I would be guzzling water. I'd be trying to get electrolytes down me, but
Mm.
it's not a nice feeling knowing
No.
that you've got to do that. You get headaches and you're just constantly feeling like you get nowhere near it. I work out in Utah a lot, southern Utah, and the air's dry, and I always feel like whenever I go to the toilet, I'm like, it's like treacle. I
Mm.
just can't.
Yeah.
I can't hydrate. I can't find a way to hydrate because the heat there is so severe, but also so dry as well. And I'm thinking these guys are running around in top level conditions,
Yeah.
trying to perform at the highest level, doing that. That must be so difficult. But that is where we're at the moment with this competition. So, in terms of the hydration, if you are not hydrated to the right level, what percentage are you thinking that you're going to be down going into a game or a training session?
Yeah, that's the biggest issue. You're dead right to bring that up. Is that I'm always worried about the hydration. There's various different studies and thoughts on this. Generally speaking, the a 2% a level of 2% dehydration will result in a 5% deterioration in aerobic performance. A level of 5% dehydration, 5% below your optimal level, will result in a 20% deterioration in
Wow.
aerobic performance.
Can you just explain to all the listeners and viewers how you measure that?
Yeah, so there's an awful lot of structures and protocols that we put in place to try and mitigate this risk and this effect. The first thing is you spoke about your drink and your electrolytes. The first thing we'll do is we'll try to establish the level. You said that you're a prodigious sweater, so
Yeah.
we try to establish the sweat rates and the level of electrolyte loss of each individual player. So we'll do a sweat patch test, which is, when they train normally, we'll collect their sweat and we'll analyze it. We can see the rate of sweat and the level of dehydration loss. That allows us to then determine a very specific and individualized rehydration drink for each individual player, because it is a very individualized thing.
Yeah.
And what I should explain, electrolytes is a very broad term. We're talking about potassium, magnesium, calcium, all of which are heavily implicated in effective muscle function. So people who've cramped, they've lost their electrolytes, and that's causing a breakdown in muscle function. The second thing is we will test your hydration status using a urine test, an osmo check. So we'll do urine specific gravity. And you will give us a urine sample in the morning.
Yeah.
The issue with that is it has to be the first time you go to the bathroom in the morning for it to be accurate.
So even if you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, do you remember we used to give you the test tubes?
Yeah.
Take that to your room, put a sample in there for me. I didn't always get urine samples come back. I got all kinds of different
Toilet
bodily
water.
fluid. I got all sorts of things. Cherry Coke was one. That wasn't you, was it?
Quite possibly.
It's Cherry Coke. That.
Oh,
there was
how
all
you
kinds of
sampled
things.
them?
Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah. Just have a sip of that. Yeah, he's dehydrated, definitely. So we just put a spot of urine onto this very simple check, and it tells us your level of dehydration. In order to drive culture, going back to Sam Allardyce at Newcastle, if you were dehydrated, you weren't training.
Really?
And that was, yeah. And
Did you get a
again,
fine?
He would fine you, yeah, if it was something that was an ongoing thing. And this goes back to the fights that you have between players and staff sometimes, and the conflicts, and trying to find a middle way. There were players who didn't want to go into training feeling bloated and heavy from taking on too much fluid.
Yeah.
Right, what can we do with you? All right, as soon as you wake up, sip, take a bottle of water to bed with you. And as soon as you get up, start sipping it. We have to find ways, individualized protocols and ways that players can become hydrated, because that's what we want, without them coming into the training ground. Because it doesn't work when you're down 2 liters of water in one, because it just falls out of you.
Yeah. Well, it's not a one shoe fits all, is it, either?
Exactly. And that's where the art of the fitness coach, the science of the fitness coach, is really the art of the fitness coach, because you're dealing with people and you're trying to find drivers of your aims and objectives.
Yeah.
And that is, talk to me, tell me why you don't want to drink.
Let's go back to the DI. So go back to a training session in America for, let's talk about Chelsea or Man City. And straight after a training session, how quickly are you trying to rehydrate the players, and how important is it for their recovery to do that?
So sort of in answer to that, the third sort of protocol I'm doing, as well as identifying rate and level of sweat loss and electrolyte loss, and pre-training urine checks, and weighing players immediately before and immediately after training to determine the level of fluid loss. So if you've lost a kilo, Warnie, I've got you weighed before, you're coming straight off, just jump on the scales, you've lost a kilo, Warnie, you need to take 1.5 liters of fluid on board. Yeah. Because that's how much you've lost. And also you will continue to sweat, and so actually have 2 liters. And I want you to get that down in the next, these 2 liters. So I've got 4 500ml bottles. I want you to take these 2 now, and I want you to sip on these 2 for the rest of the afternoon. And that is your rehydration. And then when you come back in for your evening meal, we're going to reweigh you and look again at what your level of dehydration is. And actually, I'm going to talk to you as well and say how you're feeling, and what was your RPE from that training session. What have you found in terms of how are you coping with that heat stress? How are you coping with the dehydration? Have you had any other fluids? Are you taking these fluids on board or not when I'm telling you to take them away because you're just sick of drinking? You do get sick of drinking, don't you? In those circumstances. Of course you do,
yeah, 100%.
But, when we talk about, all right, so you've got this 20% deterioration in the aerobic performance. How does that affect football? What does that mean? Well, your recovery rate is massively, massively, massively affected. So the most important and the most influential moments in games, in terms of determining the outcome of games, are always associated with high intensity actions. If you do a high speed run and then you don't have the ability, the mechanism that dehydration causes a reduction in performance is that you're losing blood volume. Your blood plasma levels are losing. So effectively, your blood viscosity increases. Your blood's getting thicker. It's getting harder to pump around the body. So there's less oxygen being delivered to the working muscles. You do that high-speed run, and then the oxygen isn't being delivered to facilitate your recovery. Yeah. So there's less of it. So the intensity of the games goes down. And I think we saw that pretty much, and certainly Maresco's alluded to that. We can't train with any intensity. How does that affect the World Cup in 12 months' time? If we can't, first of all, we need to get our protocols right in and around hydration, pre-hydration, and rehydration. But we also need to think quite carefully about our style of play and what we're asking players to do in terms of how many. There's an expectation that their number of sprints will be lower. Yeah. Their number of high intensity activities will be lower, which is, if I'm a member of staff at England, I want to really drill down into the data that Manchester City and that Chelsea have produced to see what level of performance deterioration they experienced in their players.
Yeah, I just think from the point of view of just moving things towards the next year of the World Cup and what they might have learned from this year and the heat and things like that, will FIFA give the opportunity for the World Cup to have more substitutions and bigger squads? And will that then allow players to be substituted before they hit a fatigue level and bring them on and make the games more competitive, more? And that might just be something that's something I threw out there to maybe think of that.
If I go back to one of the points that we made earlier of what's the positives of the Club World Cup, and it was the amount of money that was there. It's a product, right? The game is a product. It's entertainment. People are only going to be paying money to watch it if it's a good product.
Exactly.
And it's got to be exciting. It's got to be entertaining. Part of my thing is, when is the roof of the house going to fall in a little bit? Because we're asking the best players to play more and more games, more and more regularly competitive games. So, yeah, we do need to look very, very, very carefully at that, because if the games become slow and ponderous and not very exciting, and there's not a lot of action and there's not a lot of intensity to the games, which is what attracts people to watch the game in the first place, in many cases, then people are going to start to turn off.
Yeah.
And then the money's going to start to leave because it's not as an attractive proposition. So certainly something we need to mitigate. These games are here to stay. They're here to stay. There's nothing anybody can do about it, right? So we just have to manage the players in and around that. I do agree with you. I think that there will be. I've looked very quickly at the venues of the World Cup next year.
Yeah.
Where the heat is at its most intense is.
Can you imagine Houston?
Well, this is it. So Houston, they've got a roof, and I believe it because they're in the
got to, haven't they?
Yeah. Atlanta, they're in a roof. Dallas, they've got a roof. The only venue that doesn't have a roof or air conditioning is Kansas, and that is a venue for the World Cup. So that is one that I'm keeping my eye on quite closely in terms of which teams are going there. The Los Angeles is going to be at SoFi Stadium, and that's got kind of a translucent roof. But interestingly enough, Los Angeles this year has had lower temperatures than normal. It's still extremely hot for an Englishman to tolerate, but it's been lower, and people have. Local people have lived it for like saying, I wonder when summer's going to arrive, as I'm perspiring to death. So there's it's going to be a really, really interesting challenge, and how coaches approach that challenge is going to be very, very, very interesting.
Yeah, I think one of the questions, or one of the negatives I was just about to mention, and it's the last one we'll talk about, was during the Club World Cup was the amount of games that got abandoned or midway through got stopped for a certain amount of time. I think there was a brief stop in one of the games, but for the next 5 games, there was actually a delay of up to 2 hours. Yeah. That can't happen. I mean, but in America, that's very common, because I don't know whether viewers or listeners know this, but once there's a lightning strike, then there's a 30-minute delay until the next lightning strike. If there's no lightning strike, play can continue. If there is another one at any point, even if it's 5 minutes after, 10 minutes after, once that lightning strikes again, that clock tick starts again from 0 and goes to 30 minutes. And that was something Maresca was again scathing about, because Chelsea were actually winning 1-0, came off in an 84th minute, then came back on against Benfica. Benfica equalise in the 95th minute, and then suddenly it's extra time, and he was saying, well, we had complete control of the game. But when you've just talked about the stadiums there, I think there's only really Orlando that will be probably that will come under pressure in the World Cup. So
that's happened to me, by the way, when I was at Chicago Fire. That situation that you're talking about in Orlando, Mate, it was a nightmare. I was doing sponsored warm-ups. It was incredible. So we went down to Orlando. I think it was their first season in Major League, and Kaká's playing for them.
Wow.
And yeah,
Not bad.
It's not bad, is it? Yeah. And it was, we were doing the okie dokie. We were on and off more times.
Really?
Oh, mate. So we warmed up for the game. We actually played the first half back in, and exactly what you said. If there's a lightning strike within a certain distance of the stadium, then they're not allowed out. So there's a lightning strike. You can't go back out for half an hour. So we had basically, I think it was like a 45-minute half time or something like that. And then we've gone back out, we've restarted the game, and we've played 10 minutes and we're off again. And then, my challenge then was, right, as a fitness coach, what do I do with these players? Do I keep them at a certain level of readiness, or do I let them completely shut down and bring them back up like 5 minutes before we go back up? And I had it in my mind. I remembered Chris Hoy in the Olympics. I think it was Chris Hoy. His event, his semi-final, the time between his semi-finals and final was like an hour. And they had some fairly deep research into whether or not they let him totally switch off and switch him back on again, or they keep him at a heightened level for a period of time. And I think so. My view was I'll keep them at like a medium level of intensity. So sit down, then up, Fortunately, we were in an American football locker room, as it would be called over here. So we had loads of space.
Yeah.
So I had the room. Imagine doing it in Portsmouth or somewhere like that.
It's not happening, is it?
Yeah. So I've got the players. I can actually keep them active and keep them moving and get the balls out and play little like half volleys and things like that and keep them going. And we've got the resistance bands, so we can do little short, sharp sprints and just keep them neurally active and switched on. Then we're back out and we play for 15 minutes and then we're back off again. And I think the game kicked off at like 7:00 p.m. I think we got finished at midnight.
Wow.
Yeah, something like that. I'll need to. I mean, that's from memory. I'm sure I'm sure it's much worse. I'm sure it's much worse in my memory and imagination than it was in reality. So I'll have to check the times and figure.
But you're only talking about keeping them active there. So for people who don't understand, fueling up is massively important into a football game or a soccer game or any sport. But if say for talking sake, kickoffs at 8 p.m. in the evening, ideally we'd have a pre-match meal at 5:00, which would be 3 hours before game kickoff, wouldn't it? So how are you fueling the players? What are you thinking then?
Again, it's glycogen replenishment, so it's rapid replenishment of glycogen. So it is the drinks. It's the, over here it's the Gatorades, it's the Lucozade Sports back in the UK. It's making sure that the glycogen levels are topped up.
But psychologically for players, that's not easy because they're thinking, I'm losing power here or I'm losing energy, aren't they?
I think, yeah. And again, you've got to try and maintain that energy, mental energy within the dressing room as within the change room as these things are happening. It's very easy to get drawn into this is a joke. This is a disgrace. What shambles this, isn't it? And you might be thinking that, but you've got to present yourself to the players of, right, lads, keep switched on. Let's have 10 minutes to yourself. Just relax, and then in 10 minutes, I'm calling you in, and we're going to do this. And just while you sat there, just be calm. Just be calm. Get your breathing right. Do all your exercises. You might have other members of staff going around. Your medical staff might be, putting a little ice pack on a calf that's been kicked or whatever. I'm certainly encouraging the coaching staff to give positive messages. It's an opportunity, isn't it? If do you see the difficulty in every opportunity or the opportunity in every difficulty? You've got this situation. Nothing's going to change it. Actually, I remember thinking we were 1-0 down in the game, and I was thinking this could help us if we get this period right, or if we do it better than they're doing it, then we come out stronger. We come out in a better team. And my mind goes to, the Wimbledon Championships before they put the roof on centre court, where you would see.
I'd be on and off, wouldn't he?
Yeah, they'd be on and off.
A nightmare.
And it would affect the ebb and flow of the game, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Because you get into one player's in the ascendancy, or one team's in the ascendancy, and then, right, everybody's off. Right, here's an opportunity for us to press the reset button. And if we manage this period better than they do, then it gives us a chance. As it happens, we didn't, because we got beat 2-0. But
you were thinking positively.
I was thinking positively, yeah.
The players weren't.
No,
they were fed up.
They were like, get me back to the hotel, get me away from this place. So but yeah, those challenges are real. They happen. And if you are the fitness coach, you must have your contingency plan ready before the event. You need to know what you're going to do in the event that the team is brought off for half an hour. You can't go, all right, what we're going to do now? You need to know.
Yeah.
You need to know. And the chances are you probably won't use it, but you need to know. Everybody needs to know.
So we've looked at the pros and cons of the Club World Cup, which is absolutely divided opinions, and I think a lot of people have spoke about it in different ways. I think we've tried to speak about it in both the positive and the negative, but also from a different aspect, and we've tried to deep dive into that, which hopefully our listeners and viewers have found very, very interesting. So this is a little bit of a quick fire. Is the Club World Cup sustainable for top clubs and players? Now, bearing in mind it is every 4 years, but is that sustainable with World Cups and Euros as well, and African Cup of Nations?
Yeah, and whatever else they come up with.
CONCACAF, yeah, you name it. There's so many tournaments.
Yes, listen, it's here to stay. It's here to stay. So it's up to us as coaches to find a way to make it sustainable. I think going back to a point we made earlier, our club's going to be sustainable without it? Because the pressures of financial fair play are becoming manifest every year. And if you're a club that harbors ambitions and you want to recruit certain players, then yes, you have got to be looking to qualify for this competition, because the financial rewards are very apparent. Yes, it's sustainable. Football will always find a way. Football will always find a way.
Great point. I think it is sustainable because, well, I think it will be sustainable if you buy bigger squads and you utilize your squads and you're not afraid to do that. But I think you've got to be given the opportunity to be able to do that as well, to take more players, to have more substitutions. And I think that is the way the game might have to evolve to adapt to these situations. Can it ever be a true global spectacle without damaging domestic priorities?
On the global spectacle point, I think they need to clarify who gets into the tournament in the first place.
Massively.
I think the goalposts got shifted for one or two teams.
i.e. Messi.
A little bit. Well, yeah. So those listeners who might not understand how the Major League works, Major League Soccer in America, LA Galaxy won the Major League Soccer, the MLS Cup last year. Inter Miami won the Supporters Shield. So the club, the competition is divided into Eastern Conference, Western Conference. Everybody plays each other a certain amount of times. At the end of the season, whoever has the most points in either conference is the Supporters Shield, and then you go into a playoff. So Inter Miami won the Supporters Shield. LA Galaxy won the MLS Cup. My personal feeling, and this is just is that Inter Miami were shoehorned into there, because of the Messi factor, because it is a commercial enterprise, and people were more likely to go and see Messi.
Absolutely.
Having said that, Messi delivered one of the moments of the tournament with his free kick, and I think Suarez scored one of the goals of the tournament. So they delivered on that in terms of the entertainment spectacle. Do you think if it was the LA Galaxy of old with Beckham and Gerrard and Zlatan,
Yeah.
do you think LA Galaxy might
They've
have
been in it.
featured? I
Of
think they
course.
probably would have done.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those situations, isn't it, where what attracts people to watch things more often than not, it's the name and the quality of the product that you're putting on show. So Messi is personally for me is the best player that's ever played the game. So if I've got an opportunity to put him in a competition and go and watch him there and allow fans to go and watch him, 100% you're going to put him in it. So from a commercial aspect and also just having his face associated with the competition gives it credibility. Credibility is everything that you've got.
The amount of Messi shirts that I see just walking around Santa Monica is incredible. The impact. I'm going to get him to sign it. The impact that he's having on the game here is second only to Ted Lasso, because that is legitimately. Oh yeah, you're in soccer. Yeah, did you watch Ted Lasso?
Yeah, they love it, don't they? American people love Ted Lasso.
Yeah, so that's always the first thing. But yeah, the impact that Messi's had on MLS is the next biggest thing since Beckham came out here, without question.
Yeah. And then the other question, and I think we've pretty much covered this, was what needs to change, or should the tournament be scrapped altogether? If you had the choice,
the tournament isn't going to be scrapped. It isn't.
Should it be?
If it was, it would be replaced by something else.
Correct.
Right. So, and that something else will be driven by the clubs, because the clubs have to make significant amounts of money. They're not going to make the amount of money. How much money? I think I read somewhere that this from the media, so this isn't a credible source, some online source, that Manchester United made £7.5 million from the summer series this year.
Yeah.
And again, the summer series again reported that it had lost money. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But apparently that it was reported that made a £5.4 million loss. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. If you're Chelsea and you're coming away with £85 million, then
it's a hell of a difference.
It's a massive difference. It's hugely different. And even going out at the level that Manchester City came away with a reported £37.8 million pounds. That's way above and beyond what a summer tour, a pre-season.
It's bought a player, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And how much does that offset against? So it's here to stay. If they did scrap it, the clubs would replace it with something else, without question. What needs to change to make it more sustainable? I would argue it needs to be in a climate which is a little bit more conducive to football than the heat, the environmental conditions. But we've got the World Cup coming here next year. But then people would say, well, the World Cup was here in '94, and it was in Mexico in '86, and it's been in hot conditions before. So what's different? Well, the game's different. The intensity of the games is different. You know, there's lots of different things attached to it. So yeah, there's going to be arguments and counter arguments, isn't there?
Yeah, I think the final thought of the episode, and probably of the Club World Cup, mine would be it surprised me in a positive way, in the fact of, I think the quality of the games were good. I think the South American teams were outstanding. I think we saw that side of the game, that passion for the tournament. They take it so seriously. And I think you saw that from the South American teams. I think it showcased from the Saudi Pro League that they are competitive, more competitive than we probably give them credit for. I think everyone thinks, oh, you're going to Saudi Pro League, that's for a paycheck. It probably is, but also as well, they're very well coached. They've got top managers there. They've got some great players. And we saw a few upsets from the Saudi teams. So what we saw from the Middle Eastern teams was a very competitive performances from those guys. I think the other thing that I've looked at, obviously we spoke about, is just the ability for the national teams to go over. But I think what a lot of people are sort of failing to see as well, a lot of the stadiums, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Lammy, that they were American football stadiums, which weren't covered. So the fans didn't necessarily have the greatest experience, because they're in American football stadiums that are predominantly used over the winter months when they aren't subject to that heat, because their season runs differently. But in the World Cup, we're going to see stadiums, like you said, with roofs on them, with air conditionings, and we will see something completely different come the World Cup.
Yeah. That's a really important point, because one of the criticisms of the Club World Cup was the quality of the playing surface, because effectively what they did was they laid turf over the top of AstroTurf.
Yeah.
And it was, the ground hardness the players reported was ridiculous. 2 points I'd like to make, just to sort of a positive in it. I think you're absolutely right, and we should have probably mentioned that when we were talking about the positives at the beginning of this podcast. The impact of the Saudi teams, and they are doing it properly. And that, I think any tournament needs a story like that for it to be a success. Whatever tournament, World Cups that you can think of, there is always that fairy tale story. And in this respect, it's the Saudi team. You could be slightly tongue-in-cheek and say, well, they've got a lot of money, so, but we're driving.
Still got to put it together.
But they do, yeah. All the money in the world doesn't mean you're going to be that. They were very, 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 very strong team, and they performed, and that for me that's an indicator of the growth of the game in that area. One of the things that I don't like, or that instinctively I don't like about the Club World Cup, is this idea of that the commercial forces that are adding more and more competitive games to the annual fixture list.
Yeah.
So, a thought that popped into my head was, how far away are we from a 12-month club season? So I had a look. So I've got it written down here. Chelsea played their first game of the 2024-25 season on July the 24th, 2024, in a pre-season friendly against Wrexham. The last game, obviously, was the 13th of July, 2025, when they played PSG in the final. Right? So how far away are we from a 12-month season? We're here. Chelsea have played July 2024 to July 2025 in their season. So that's an indicator. And one of the things that we haven't spoken about is how the Players' Union have reacted to it, and what they had to say in terms of the burden that it's placing on players, the travel burden, their recommendation of a mandatory 4-week off-season and a mandatory 4-week pre-season, effectively. So players get 8 weeks between the end of the season and the beginning of a new competition.
Yeah,
how that plays out will be interesting, and the influence that they're going to have over the Club World Cups of the future will be interesting to see.
Brilliant. Well, I think we've absolutely picked the bones out of it as much as possible. Like I said, we've tried to do it in a little bit of a different way. That has been another episode of Strain on the Game. Next week's episode, we will be focusing on the start of the Premier League season and how it has taken shape, and how the preparation for those finer details before the start of the season, and also the recovery after the first game of the season, will look like. So join us next week for another episode.